I will never forget the sound of my granddaughter's voice on that phone call, cold, businesslike, as if she were calling a stranger instead of the woman who had raised her since she was 3 years old. "Grandma Joan," she said, "the lawyers need you to sign some papers. It's just a formality." Those words, just a formality, would haunt me for months to come. My name is Joan Westbrook. I'm 71 years old, and until 8 weeks ago, I owned a successful bed and breakfast in the coastal town of Harborview, a property worth close to $2 million that I had built from nothing over 35 years. The property my granddaughter Natalie convinced me to transfer to her name. The property she and her new fiancé tried to steal from me while I was still breathing. But there's something they didn't know. Something I discovered purely by accident. A detail buried in documents they never bothered to read completely. A detail that would bring their entire scheme crashing down around them. Let me tell you how this nightmare began and how I clawed my way back from the edge of losing everything. It all started on a crisp October morning 18 months ago. I was in the kitchen of Westbrook Inn, my bed and breakfast, preparing breakfast for the guests. The smell of fresh cinnamon rolls filled the air, and sunlight streamed through the large bay windows overlooking the harbor. At 70, I was still running the place by myself. Though my joints protested more each year, the inn had been my life's work. After my husband Thomas died of a heart attack 28 years ago, I was left with a young daughter, Margaret, and a mountain of debt. Thomas had been a dreamer, always investing in schemes that never panned out. When he died, I discovered we were 3 months behind on the mortgage, and had creditors calling daily. I could have declared bankruptcy. I could have given up. Instead, I took our small, rundown 3-bedroom house and transformed it. I added rooms, renovated bathrooms, landscaped the gardens, and slowly, painfully, built Westbrook Inn into one of the most sought-after bed and breakfasts on the coast. It took 15 years of 16-hour days, of doing most of the work myself, of learning plumbing and electrical work and carpentry because I couldn't afford to hire anyone. But I did it. I built something real, something valuable, something I could pass down to my family. My daughter Margaret met Robert Chen when she was 25. He seemed nice enough, a software engineer with a steady job and polite manners. They married quickly, and a year later, Natalie was born. My beautiful granddaughter with Margaret's green eyes and Robert's dark hair. For 3 years, everything seemed perfect. Then came the car accident. Margaret and Robert were driving home from an anniversary dinner when a drunk driver ran a red light. Robert died instantly. Margaret held on for 2 days before her injuries proved too much. At 3 years old, Natalie became an orphan. There was never any question about what I would do. Natalie was my granddaughter, my blood, the only family I had left. I took her in immediately, and she became the center of my world. I raised her in the inn, and she grew up helping me greet guests, learning to make beds with hospital corners, to cook breakfast for 20 people, to smile even when she was tired. She was a good child, responsible, caring, hard-working. She excelled in school, got into a good college, and earned a degree in hospitality management. It seemed natural that she would take over the inn someday. It was what we had always talked about, what I had always planned for. After college, Natalie worked at several high-end hotels in the city, gaining experience. She would visit me every few weeks, always full of stories about the hotel industry, about new ideas she had for the inn. I loved those visits, loved seeing the woman she had become. Then, that October morning, she called to say she was coming to visit. She had something important to discuss. I should have known something was wrong by the tone of her voice. There was an edge to it, an excitement that felt forced, but I was so happy to hear from her that I didn't notice the warning signs. She arrived that afternoon, pulling up in a new car, a sleek silver Mercedes that must have cost more than I made in a year. She was dressed in an expensive-looking pantsuit, her hair professionally styled, her nails manicured. She looked successful, polished, nothing like the girl who used to help me weed the garden in old jeans and t-shirts. "Grandma," she said, hugging me, but the hug felt different somehow, quicker, less genuine. We sat in the sunroom, the room that overlooked the garden and the harbor beyond. It had always been our favorite place to talk. "The inn looks wonderful," Natalie said, though she barely glanced around. "You've really maintained it beautifully." "It's a lot of work," I admitted. "The winters are getting harder. Last year, I had to replace the entire heating system. Cost me $40,000. Natalie nodded sympathetically. "That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about, Grandma. I've been worried about you, running this place all by yourself at your age." I bristled slightly at your age, but let it pass. "I manage just fine." "I know you do. You're amazing. But what happens if you get sick? If you fall and break something? Who takes care of the guests then?" She leaned forward, taking my hand. "I've been thinking about this a lot, and I have a proposal for you." I waited, curious now. "What if you transferred the inn into my name? Legally, I mean. I could handle all the business aspects, the taxes, the insurance, the maintenance costs. You could keep running it day to day, of course. Nothing would change in terms of how you live or work. But I could take the financial burden off your shoulders." I stared at her, surprised. "But honey, the inn will be yours anyway when I'm gone. It's in my will." "I know, Grandma. But if we wait until then, there will be estate taxes, probate, all sorts of complications. It could tie up the property for months, maybe years. And during that time, the inn couldn't operate. All your regular guests, your reputation, everything you've built, it could be lost." She pulled out a folder and spread some documents on the coffee table. "I've been consulting with a financial advisor. Look at these numbers. If we transfer the property now, we can avoid most of the estate taxes. That's potentially saving hundreds of thousands of dollars. Money that could go into renovations, improvements, building the business instead of going to the government." I picked up the papers, but the numbers and legal terms swam before my eyes. I had never been good with complicated financial documents. That had been Thomas's domain, and look how that had turned out. "I don't know, Natalie. This seems very complicated." "It's really not," she assured me. "It's actually quite simple. You just sign the property over to me, and I handle everything else. You continue living here, running the inn exactly as you always have. The only difference is that I take care of all the paperwork and expenses." "But what about my security? If the property is in your name, what happens to me?" Natalie laughed, a light, dismissive sound. "Grandma, I'm your granddaughter. You raised me. Do you really think I would ever do anything to hurt you? This is about protecting you, protecting what you've built." She had a point. This was Natalie, the little girl I had tucked into bed every night, whose nightmares I had soothed, whose scraped knees I had bandaged. She wouldn't betray me. "Let me think about it," I said finally. Of course. Take your time." But something flickered in her eyes, something that might have been impatience. Although, the tax year ends in December. If we want to maximize the benefits, we should probably do this before then. Over the next few weeks, Natalie called frequently. Each time, she had new information about how the transfer would benefit us both. She sent me articles about estate planning, about the importance of transferring assets before death, about families who had lost everything to taxes and probate. She also started visiting more often, always bringing expensive gifts: a cashmere sweater, a new tablet, a beautiful pearl necklace. The gifts made me uncomfortable. I wasn't used to such extravagance. "You deserve nice things, Grandma," she would say. "You've worked so hard for so long. Let me spoil you a little." It was during one of these visits that she brought someone with her, a man. His name was Marcus Blackwood, and from the moment I met him, every instinct I had screamed danger. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with salt and pepper hair styled perfectly, an expensive watch that glinted on his wrist, and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He was probably in his early 50s, nearly 20 years older than Natalie. Grandma Joan, Natalie said, her voice bubbling with excitement. I want you to meet someone very special. This is Marcus. We've been seeing each other for a few months now. Marcus extended his hand, and when I shook it, his grip was firm, almost aggressive. Mrs. Westbrook, I've heard so much about you. Natalie speaks of you constantly, and this inn, it's even more impressive than she described. There was something in the way he looked around the room, assessing, calculating, as if he were appraising the property rather than admiring it. How did you two meet? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. At a real estate investment conference, Marcus said smoothly. I own several properties along the coast, hotels, restaurants, a few commercial buildings. When I met Natalie and heard about this place, I was fascinated. Bed and breakfasts like this are becoming rare gems, very valuable. The way he said valuable made my stomach tighten. Over dinner that night, a meal Natalie insisted on preparing, though she had never been much of a cook, Marcus dominated the conversation. He talked about his business ventures, his connections, his vision for maximizing the potential of coastal properties. Places like this, he said, gesturing around the dining room, are sitting on gold mines. With the right renovations, the right marketing, you could triple your income, maybe more. I'm happy with the income I have, I said quietly. The inn provides enough for me to live comfortably. Marcus laughed, a sound that grated on my nerves. Mrs. Westbrook, with all due respect, comfortable isn't enough in today's market. You have to think bigger. Expansion, luxury suites, maybe a spa. The wealthy tourists want experiences, and they'll pay premium prices for them. This isn't that kind of establishment, I said, my voice firmer now. I run a bed and breakfast, not a luxury resort. My guests come here because it's cozy, personal, homey. Grandma, Natalie interjected quickly, Marcus is just trying to help. He has so much experience in this industry. I looked at my granddaughter, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't noticed before. She was wearing a ring, a large diamond on her left hand. Natalie, I said slowly, is that an engagement ring? She glanced at Marcus, then back at me, a bright smile spreading across her face. Yes, I was going to tell you tonight. Marcus proposed last week. We're getting married. The room seemed to tilt. Married? But you've only known each other a few months. 5 months, Natalie corrected. And when you know, you know. Isn't that what you always told me about you and Grandpa Thomas? It was true, I had said that. Thomas and I had married after a whirlwind courtship of just 4 months, but we had been young, foolish, in love. This felt different. Congratulations, I managed to say, though the word tasted like ash in my mouth. Marcus reached over and took Natalie's hand, that cold smile still on his face. I'm a lucky man, Mrs. Westbrook. Your granddaughter is exceptional, beautiful, intelligent, and with a keen business sense. We're going to do great things together. That night, after they left, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Marcus's eyes when he looked around the inn, about the way he had assessed everything with that calculating gaze. I thought about Natalie's new clothes, her new car, her new mannerisms. She had changed, and not for the better. But she was in love, I told myself. People change when they're in love. And maybe I was just being an overprotective grandmother, worried about losing the little girl I had raised. 2 weeks later, Natalie called with news. She and Marcus were getting married in a month, a small ceremony, just a few close friends and family. Would I come? Of course I would come. She was my granddaughter, my only family. Even if I had reservations about Marcus, I would support her. The wedding was held at an exclusive country club, the kind of place where everything whispered money. There were probably 50 guests, though Natalie had said it would be small. Everyone was dressed in designer clothes, dripping with jewelry, talking about stocks and investments and vacation homes. I felt out of place in my simple dress, the best I owned, but clearly not up to the standards of this crowd. Marcus's friends and family were all there, successful business people, investors, real estate developers. They barely acknowledged me, and when they did, it was with barely concealed condescension. The old woman in the cheap dress who ran a little bed and breakfast. During the reception, I overheard a conversation that chilled me to the bone. I had stepped outside for some air, and two men were standing near the doorway smoking cigars. They didn't notice me in the shadows. "Marcus really hooked a good one this time," one of them said with a laugh. "That inn property is worth at least $2 million, the other replied. "Maybe more with the right development. He's been eyeing coastal properties for years, but the owners never want to sell. This way, he gets it handed to him on a silver platter." "Think she knows? The old woman?" "Doubt it. Marcus said she's already softened up, ready to sign everything over. He gives her another month, 2 at most." "And the granddaughter?" A pause. "She's useful, pretty thing, and she has the old lady's trust. After the property's secured, well, Marcus has never been one to stay married long, has he?" They laughed, a cruel sound, and moved away. I stood there in the shadows, my heart pounding. They were talking about me, about Natalie, about the inn. This was a setup. Marcus was using Natalie to get to my property. But did Natalie know? Was she complicit in this scheme, or was she being manipulated too? I wanted to believe the latter. I needed to believe that my granddaughter, the child I had raised, wasn't capable of such betrayal. I decided to wait, to watch, to see what happened next. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I had misunderstood the conversation. But I wasn't wrong. After the wedding, the pressure to transfer the property intensified. Natalie and Marcus moved into a penthouse apartment in the city, a place with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture that probably cost more than I made in 5 years. Whenever I visited, which was rarely, I felt like an unwelcome guest in my own granddaughter's home. But they visited me constantly at the inn, always together, always with the same message. I needed to transfer the property to Natalie for my own protection. "Grandma, you're not getting any younger," Natalie would say. "What happens if something happens to you? The state could take the inn to pay estate taxes. Everything you built could be lost." Marcus would add his smooth voice to the conversation. "Mrs. Westbrook, I've seen it happen dozens of times. Families torn apart, properties sold at auction, legacies destroyed, all because people waited too long to do proper estate planning." They brought documents, had them spread across my kitchen table, transfer papers, tax forms, legal agreements. The language was so complex I couldn't understand half of it. "You should have a lawyer review these," I said more than once. "Absolutely," Marcus would agree. "We encourage that. In fact, we know an excellent attorney who specializes in estate planning. Very experienced, very discreet. We can set up an appointment for you." But I was stubborn. Something about the whole situation felt wrong, and I couldn't shake the memory of that conversation I had overheard at the wedding. Then things started happening around the inn. Strange things. First, the health inspector showed up unannounced. He went through the entire property with a fine-tooth comb and found violations I had never heard of. The handrail on the back steps was supposedly a 1/4 inch too low. The water heater was potentially non-compliant, even though it had passed inspection the year before. The smoke detectors, though functioning perfectly, were apparently the wrong model for a commercial property. The fines totaled $15,000, and I had 30 days to make corrections or face closure. I was devastated. In 35 years, I had never had a serious violation. My inn was always spotless, always up to code. I prided myself on that. When I told Natalie, she was immediately sympathetic. "Oh, Grandma, that's terrible. How are you going to pay for all those repairs?" "I'll manage," I said, though I had no idea how. "I have some savings." "You shouldn't have to drain your savings," Marcus interjected. They had come to visit as soon as they heard the news. "This is exactly why you need to transfer the property. If it were in Natalie's name, we could handle these expenses. We have the resources, the connections. We could probably even get some of these violations dismissed. It was too convenient, too perfectly timed, but I couldn't prove anything. A week later, my insurance company notified me that they were canceling my policy. No explanation, just a formal letter stating that they would not be renewing my coverage. Without insurance, I couldn't operate the inn. It was illegal. I called the insurance company in a panic. After being transferred 3 times, I finally spoke to someone who would give me an answer. Mrs. Westbrook, your property has been flagged as high risk due to recent health and safety violations. But I'm fixing those violations. I have contractors coming next week. I'm sorry, ma'am. The decision has been made. You'll need to find another insurance provider. I tried. I called every insurance company I could find. None of them would cover me. They all said the same thing. My property was high risk. They couldn't take on the liability. It was Marcus. I knew it was Marcus. He had connections, influence. Somehow he was orchestrating all of this. When Natalie and Marcus visited next, they had a solution ready. We can get you insurance, Marcus said, through my commercial property portfolio, but the property would need to be in Natalie's name for the policy to apply. I stared at him, seeing clearly now the trap he had built around me. No insurance meant I couldn't operate. Without operating, I had no income. Without income, I would lose the property anyway, either to foreclosure or bankruptcy. I need time to think, I said. Natalie's face hardened. Grandma, you don't have time. You have guests booked for next month. What are you going to tell them when you can't open because you don't have insurance? She was right, and they knew it. I was cornered. Fine, I said finally, the word tasting like defeat. I'll sign the papers. The relief on their faces was obvious, and in that moment, I knew. Natalie knew. She was part of this. My granddaughter, whom I had raised and loved and sacrificed everything for, was actively participating in stealing my property. The betrayal hurt worse than anything I had ever experienced, worse even than losing Thomas or Margaret. Marcus had the papers ready, naturally. He pulled them from his briefcase with barely concealed triumph. Just a few signatures, Mrs. Westbrook, and everything will be taken care of. The property transfers to Natalie and will handle all the insurance, repairs, and expenses. You can keep living here and running the inn exactly as you always have. I picked up the pen, my hand shaking. I want my own lawyer to review these first. Of course, Marcus said smoothly. But given the time constraints, the insurance needs to be in place in 3 days, or you'll have to cancel all your bookings. Perhaps we could move forward now and have your lawyer review afterwards, just as a formality to put your mind at ease. It was a trap, and I knew it, but what choice did I have? I was about to sign when something made me pause. Call it instinct, call it divine intervention, call it whatever you want. But something made me stop and actually read the document in front of me. It was dense legal language, pages and pages of it. But as I forced myself to focus, to really read what I was signing, I saw it. Hidden in paragraph 17, subpoint C, in language so convoluted it was clearly designed to be overlooked. Upon transfer of property, all rights of occupancy by the grantor shall cease within 30 days of notice by the grantee. In plain English, Natalie could kick me out with 30 days' notice. What is this? I asked, pointing to the clause. Marcus barely glanced at it. Standard legal language, Mrs. Westbrook. Just formalities. This says Natalie can evict me. Only in extreme circumstances, Natalie said quickly. Like if you became incapacitated and needed to be in a nursing home or something. It's just to protect everyone legally. I'm not signing this, I said, putting down the pen. Marcus's friendly mask slipped for just a moment. Mrs. Westbrook, be reasonable. Without this transfer, you're going to lose everything anyway. Then I'll lose it, but I won't sign away my right to live in my own home. Natalie's eyes went cold. Fine, Grandma. Keep being stubborn, but don't come crying to me when the bank forecloses and you're out on the street. They left, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt like I had won a small victory. I hadn't signed. I still owned my property. But the victory was short-lived. The next 2 months were a living hell. First, my main supplier for the inn, the company that provided linens, toiletries, and cleaning supplies, suddenly doubled their prices. When I called to complain, they said their rates had adjusted for the market. But when I contacted other suppliers, they all quoted me the same inflated prices or said they couldn't service my area. Then 3 of my longtime employees quit within the same week. The housekeeper who had been with me for 12 years, the maintenance man who had worked there for 15, and my part-time cook all gave notice. They were vague about their reasons, just said they had found better opportunities. I later learned through a friend that they had all been offered jobs at one of Marcus's hotels. Jobs that paid double what I could afford, with the understanding that they were not to work for me anymore. My bookings started canceling. Guests who had reservations months in advance were calling to cancel, many of them citing negative reviews they had seen online. I went online and felt sick. Someone had created fake accounts and flooded review sites with terrible reviews of the inn. Claims of bedbugs, dirty rooms, food poisoning. All lies, all clearly coordinated, all designed to destroy my reputation. I reported the reviews as fake, but the process was slow. Meanwhile, new bookings had dried up completely. I was hemorrhaging money. Without guests, I had no income, but I still had to pay the mortgage, the utilities, the property taxes. My savings were disappearing faster than I could track. Natalie called occasionally, always with the same message. "It's not too late, Grandma. Sign the property over and we can fix all of this." I refused every time. I knew now that signing would mean losing everything. At least this way, I still had a chance. Then came the letter from the bank. I was 3 months behind on my mortgage. They were beginning foreclosure proceedings. I had 60 days to pay the full amount owed plus penalties, nearly $30,000, or the property would be sold at auction. I didn't have $30,000. After all the repairs, the fines, the months of no income, I barely had $3,000 left in savings. I called the bank, begging for an extension, for a payment plan, for anything. They were sympathetic but firm. The rules were the rules. That night I sat in my empty inn, no guests, no employees, just me and the echoing silence, and cried. I had fought so hard, sacrificed so much, but I was going to lose anyway. The next morning, Natalie showed up at my door. "I heard about the foreclosure," she said, not unkindly. "Grandma, please, let us help you. Sign the property over, and Marcus and I will pay off the mortgage. You can stay here, just like we always promised." I looked at my granddaughter, trying to find some trace of the child I had raised. "The clause about evicting me, will you remove it?" She hesitated. "Grandma, that's just a legal protection. We would never actually use it. Then removing it shouldn't be a problem." Another hesitation. "Marcus says it needs to stay, for insurance purposes." "Then no, I won't sign." Natalie's sympathy vanished. "You're going to lose everything anyway, Grandma. You're just being stubborn and stupid. When the bank forecloses, you'll have nothing. No property, no money, no home. Is that really what you want?" "I want my granddaughter back," I said quietly. "The one I raised. The one who wouldn't betray her own family." Natalie's face flushed. "I'm trying to help you. You're too proud to see it." "You're trying to steal from me. There's a difference." She left without another word, tires screeching as she drove away. I had 45 days until foreclosure. I tried everything I could think of. I called every bank, every lender, trying to refinance or get a loan. But at my age, with no income, no one would lend to me. I contacted a real estate agent about selling the property quickly. She told me that with the fake reviews and the pending foreclosure, the property had been stigmatized. I might get half of what it was worth, if I was lucky. And even that would take months I didn't have. I was out of options. Then, 3 weeks before the foreclosure deadline, I received a call that changed everything. The call came from an old friend, Patricia Morrison. She and her late husband had been regular guests at the inn for years. After her husband passed, she still came once a year, always in the spring. "Joan," she said, her voice warm and familiar, "I heard you were having some trouble. I wanted to check on you." I broke down and told her everything. The pressure from Natalie and Marcus, the mysterious problems with the inn, the foreclosure, all of it. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Joan," she said finally, "I'm going to tell you something. My husband, before he died, mentioned something about Marcus Blackwood. We were at a charity event, and someone introduced Marcus as a real estate investor. My husband went pale. Later, he told me that Marcus had a reputation. He targets properties owned by elderly people, usually single women. He befriends them, or has someone else befriend them, gains their trust, and then engineers situations that force them to sell or transfer their properties at a fraction of what they're worth." My blood ran cold. "Did your husband have proof?" "He died before he could gather anything concrete." "But Joan, you need to investigate this man. If he's done this before, there will be a trail." After we hung up, I sat down at my computer. I wasn't very tech-savvy, but I knew how to use a search engine. I typed in Marcus Blackwood Real Estate and started reading. The first few pages were just his business website and some professional articles. But when I dug deeper, adding words like lawsuit and fraud to my search, I found something. A newspaper article from 5 years ago. A woman named Helen Thornberry had accused Marcus Blackwood of defrauding her of her property. She claimed he had romanced her daughter, convinced her to transfer her waterfront property to the daughter's name, and then the daughter and Marcus had evicted her and sold the property for a massive profit. The case had been dismissed on a technicality, but the accusations were there in black and white. I kept digging and found 2 more similar cases. Different cities, different women, same pattern. In both cases, the women had lost their properties and received minimal compensation. Marcus Blackwood was a predator, and Natalie was either his willing accomplice or his latest victim. I printed everything I could find and put it in a folder. Then I did something I should have done months ago. I called a lawyer. His name was Gordon Wells, and he had been recommended by Patricia. He specialized in elder fraud and real estate law. I met with him the next day and showed him everything. The documents Natalie and Marcus had wanted me to sign, the articles about Marcus's past, the timeline of events at my inn. Gordon studied everything carefully, his expression growing more serious by the minute. "Mrs. Westbrook," he said finally, "you're the victim of a sophisticated fraud scheme. Everything that's happened, the health violations, the insurance cancellation, the employee departures, the bad reviews, these were all orchestrated to force you into a desperate position. Can you prove it?" "Some of it. The reviews, for instance, were all posted from the same IP address using different fake accounts. That's traceable. The health violations came after a complaint was filed against your property. I can subpoena the records to see who filed it. The insurance cancellation? That's harder to prove, but the pattern is clear." "What about the foreclosure?" Gordon smiled grimly. "That's the interesting part. The foreclosure can be stopped if we can prove fraud, and I think I can make that case. But there's something else." He pulled out the documents I had almost signed and pointed to the fine print. "This transfer agreement is poorly written. It's designed to look official, but it has several provisions that wouldn't hold up in court. For instance, this eviction clause. It's so broadly written that it's essentially unconscionable. No judge would enforce it." "So even if I had signed, Natalie couldn't have evicted me?" "She could have tried, but you would have had grounds to fight it. And here's the most important part." He pointed to another section of the document. "This clause right here. It says the transfer is subject to all existing liens and encumbrances. Do you know what that means?" I shook my head. "It means that even if you had transferred the property to Natalie, your mortgage would have remained your responsibility. They would have gotten the property, but you would have still owed the bank money. If you defaulted, the bank would have foreclosed on a property you no longer owned, leaving you with the debt but no asset. The cruelty of it took my breath away, so I would have lost everything anyway." "Exactly. This was never about helping you, Mrs. Westbrook. This was about stealing your property while leaving you with the financial burden. I felt a cold rage building inside me. What can we do? Gordon smiled. We fight back. First, I'm going to file for an emergency injunction to stop the foreclosure while we investigate the fraud. Second, I'm going to contact the FBI. If Marcus Blackwood has done this multiple times across state lines, that's federal wire fraud. Third, we're going to sue them, both of them, for fraud, elder abuse, and emotional distress. I don't have money for a lawsuit. I'll take the case on contingency. If we win, I take a percentage of the settlement. If we lose, you owe me nothing. But Mrs. Westbrook, I don't plan on losing. For the first time in months, I felt hope. Gordon moved fast. Within 2 days, he had filed for the injunction, and the court granted a temporary stay on the foreclosure. I had breathing room. He also contacted a forensic accountant who began tracing the money trail around Marcus's business dealings. What she found was damning. Marcus had a pattern of loans and transfers that always involved elderly women and their properties. He would create shell companies, buy properties at below market prices from these women or their family members, then immediately flip them for huge profits. The profits went into offshore accounts where they were difficult to trace. In at least 4 cases, the elderly women ended up destitute while Marcus made millions. Gordon also discovered something else. Natalie had taken out a loan using the inn as collateral. Somehow, even though she didn't legally own the property, she had managed to secure a loan for $200,000. That was illegal. That was fraud. She forged your signature, Gordon explained. She must have created fake documents showing she owned the property, then used those to get the loan. The lender didn't do their due diligence. Where did the money go? The accountant had traced it. $150,000 had gone to pay off Marcus's gambling debts. The rest had been used for their expensive lifestyle, the penthouse apartment, Natalie's new car, luxury vacations. My own granddaughter had committed fraud using my property, and she had done it to support a criminal. Gordon contacted the FBI as promised. They were very interested in Marcus Blackwood. Apparently, they had been building a case against him for years, but hadn't had enough evidence. The victims were always too ashamed or too frightened to testify. But I wasn't ashamed, and I wasn't frightened anymore. I was angry. An FBI agent came to interview me, a woman named Sarah Chen. She was patient and thorough, asking me to recount every detail of my interactions with Marcus and Natalie. Mrs. Westbrook, she said when I finished, you're not the first person Marcus Blackwood has done this to, but you might be the first one who can help us stop him. Are you willing to testify if this goes to trial? Absolutely. Continue. 0906, I said without hesitation. Sarah smiled. Good, because we're going to take him down. The investigation moved forward. Gordon filed the lawsuit. The FBI opened a formal investigation. Everything was in motion. Then one evening, I got an unexpected visitor. I heard a knock on the door and opened it to find Natalie standing there. She looked terrible. Her hair was messy, her expensive clothes rumpled, her eyes red from crying. Grandma, she said, her voice breaking. Can I come in? I hesitated, then stepped aside. We sat in the living room, an uncomfortable silence between us. Finally, Natalie spoke. I know about the lawsuit. I know about the FBI. Good, I said coldly. Grandma, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know. Didn't know what? That your husband is a criminal? That you forged my signature to get a loan? That you participated in stealing my property? She flinched. Marcus told me it was all legal. He said we were helping you. He said, he lied to you, Natalie, and you were so blinded by his money and his charm that you didn't question any of it. Tears streamed down her face. I know, and I hate myself for it. But Grandma, you have to believe me. I didn't understand what he was really doing until it was too late. When did you understand? She looked away. A few weeks ago. I overheard him on the phone, talking about selling the inn. He was laughing, saying how easy it had been to manipulate the old woman. He meant you, Grandma. And he said that once the inn was sold, he wouldn't need me anymore either. that I was just a means to an end. So you're not sorry for what you did to me, I said bitterly. You're sorry that he betrayed you too. No! She looked at me desperately. I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry I didn't listen to you. I'm sorry I trusted him over you. I'm sorry I let him poison me against you. Grandma, I was wrong. About everything. I wanted to believe her. God, how I wanted to believe her. But I couldn't forget the coldness in her eyes when she had tried to force me to sign those papers, the way she had dismissed my concerns, the months of manipulation and lies. What do you want from me, Natalie? I want to help, she said. I want to testify against Marcus. I want to tell the FBI everything I know, and I want to give you back the inn. I'll sign whatever documents I need to sign to make this right. You don't own the inn, I pointed out. The transfer was never completed. But I took out that loan using it as collateral. I'll find a way to pay it back. I'll sell everything I have. I'll get a second job. I'll do whatever it takes. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. But all I saw was genuine remorse and desperation. Talk to my lawyer, I said finally. Tell him everything you know. If you're serious about making this right, that's where you start. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Thank you, Grandma. Thank you for giving me a chance. I'm not promising anything, Natalie. You broke my heart. That's not something that heals easily. I know, she whispered, but I'm going to try. I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make this up to you. After she left, I sat alone in the dark, wondering if I had made the right decision. Could I trust her? Or was this just another manipulation? Only time would tell. Natalie kept her word. She went to Gordon's office the next day and gave a full statement. She told him everything about Marcus's business dealings, the other properties he was targeting, the offshore accounts, the fake companies. She gave him access to Marcus's files, his computer passwords, everything she could find. She also went to the FBI and agreed to cooperate fully with their investigation. The information she provided was devastating. Marcus had defrauded at least 12 elderly women over the past 10 years, stealing properties worth a combined $15 million. Some of the women had lost everything and were now living in poverty. One had died homeless. Armed with Natalie's testimony and evidence, the FBI moved quickly. They arrested Marcus at his office on charges of wire fraud, elder abuse, forgery, and a dozen other crimes. The look on his face when they led him away in handcuffs, according to Natalie, was one of complete shock. He had thought he was untouchable. The arrest made news. Local papers ran stories about the coastal property predator who had targeted vulnerable elderly women. My story, along with the stories of Marcus's other victims, was told in detail. The publicity brought unexpected support. Former guests of the inn reached out, offering to leave positive reviews to counter the fake ones. Suppliers contacted me, apologizing for raising their prices and offering to restore their original rates. Even my former employees called, saying they had been pressured to leave and asking if they could have their jobs back. The community rallied around me, and slowly, the inn began to recover. The trial took place 8 months later. I testified, as did Natalie and 3 of Marcus's other victims. The evidence was overwhelming. Marcus Blackwood was found guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 20 years in federal prison and ordered him to pay restitution to all his victims. For me, that meant recovering the $200,000 Natalie had fraudulently borrowed, plus damages. Natalie pleaded guilty to her role in the fraud. Because she had cooperated with the FBI and provided crucial evidence, and because Gordon argued that she had been manipulated by Marcus, she received a lighter sentence: 2 years of probation, community service, and restitution payments. She also had to pay a fine, and her legal fees bankrupted her. She lost the penthouse apartment, the expensive car, everything Marcus had bought her with stolen money. But she never complained. She moved into a small studio apartment, got a job as a bookkeeper at a local business, and spent every free moment helping at the inn, trying to rebuild what she had helped destroy.